It's interesting that the SETI comments on this was, well, you know what? The radio telescope was right beside it. So why didn't they just send a radio signal, right? And if this is true, why didn't they just send a radio signal? And my reasoning for that, my answer to that is that, well, maybe they wanted the rest of the world to have the information. Because if they would have sent a radio signal, I assure you that stuff would have not made it on the local radio station. So this is really first contact. This is them talking back. Are we listening? Well, interestingly, when I looked at the bottom of that punch card, I was very, very intrigued, going, well, what is that technology down there? I'd like to know. Maybe it works with what I'm doing. And sure enough, you see, but you can't do anything with it because it's so low resolution. The code is so simple. So I couldn't really do anything with it. And then it was found that the exact same field in England, a year prior to this card, this punch card appearing in it, across the same radio telescope, they had given us the answer to what's at the bottom of the punch card. The exact same geometry. They had given the answer before we asked the question. The same radio telescope with the same security guards and all this. They didn't see nothing. And this, again, is a beautiful fractal division of space based on tetrahedral arrays. Again, here we see singularity, boundaries formation, and then duplication of the boundaries with radial expansion in a tetrahedron array. So we have huge stones that in some cases are found hundreds of miles from the quarry where they were cut. Extremely precise buildings all around the world. Ancient societies, oral and written traditions that talks about sun gods coming from the stars. And even today, thousands and thousands of very powerful evidence of unidentified flying objects. You might wonder, why are these beings not communicating with us directly anymore? Well, that may be because our society has grown to be quite violent. However, couldn't we learn from the information they left for us thousands of years ago? Is there evidence that these beings were here prior and that they left us to figure things out until maybe we evolved to a level where they could contact us again? These are the skull of Tutankhamun and his brother. This is the bust of Nefertiti, all showing elongated heads. Typically in ancient Egyptian tradition, the sun gods had very elongated head, and the semi-sun gods, which were the progenitor of the normal humans having babies with sun gods, would have not so elongated head. This is a skull that was found in South America, in temples in South America. This is enormous in proportion and cannot be the result of binding of the head. The reason why that is not possible is that when you bind the head of a child so that you deform the skull features, then this binding of the head deforms the skull features but does not increase the volume of the skull cavity. In this case, the volume of the skull cavity is almost twice the size of a normal human being. Now, if there was only one of these that were found, you would say, well, maybe it was an anomaly, maybe it was a deformity. Well, there's all sorts of things that makes it not so. For instance, the jaw bones, the feature on the cheeks bones are not Homo sapien. They're more of the Neanderthal and mix of various evolution in the evolution chain that we believe is linear in evolution of man, and they shouldn't be all combined in the same skull. The other problem is that there's not just one of these skulls that was found, but multiple skulls that were found like this in temples around South America and Mexico. This one is a little bit different, as you see. It's not as pointed. Still enormous and still has some of these unusual features in their facial features and the jaw features. Others found in Mexico is these melon heads, where those actually have even a larger volume capacity inside the head, very large eye sockets, and a very strange structure of the skull. This is not the largest skull ever found. The largest volumic cavity of the skull occurred on this, that was found with this skull. And this is like the M kind of structure skull, where the hemispheres seem to have developed in independence, and very, very large skull. The front portion of the skull are missing, but the plates of the skull are all there, and they're very large in volume. So these are physical evidence you can touch of these beings having been around in ancient antiquity. You find them, stories about these beings, everywhere. You find them in Mayan tradition, Inca tradition. They both call them the sun gods. In the Egyptian tradition, in the Chinese tradition, calls them the sun gods as well. The Japanese tradition, pretty well all around the world. In the Mayan tradition as well, you find grids like so that have mathematical information on them that are thought to be calendars, very precise calendars about the changes in our solar systems, and interesting symbols that have these vortices that are interacting. And when you look at the math from these codes, you find that they match the 64 tetrahedron growth structure of space-time that we've been discussing all day. This is some of the oldest tradition on Earth. It has very, very ancient writing. These plates, this plate in particular, is a creation myth in which the sun gods come to the earth and gives man the black, it's called a black sun in those traditions. It's been translated in various other traditions, for instance in the Quran, as the black stone, okay? And it's described as a very highly radiating sun, like a sun in a box, like a desktop black hole. All right? And the tradition talks about the sun gods coming to the top of the mountain and the humans going to meet the sun gods, and the sun gods bestowing this on the human. Then you find in these Sumerian traditions that these eventually built very complex, very sophisticated. This is where we're actually bombing right now, Iraq and Iran location, where very, very sophisticated pyramidal structures were built, ziggurats and